Thank you for joining us today on Earthfile. Welcome to the program. I'm Ayola Kasim. The United Nations Environment Programme says that plastic pollution could be reduced by 80% and result in savings of over $300 billion per year if countries and companies make deep policy and market shifts using existing technologies. The report recommends first eliminating unnecessary plastics to reduce the size of the problem, and then implementing the reuse, recycling, and reorientation and diversification of plastic products. Truth is, plastics in many ways contribute positively to society. There is, however, a dark side. The way we produce, use, and dispose of plastic is polluting ecosystems, creating risks for human and animal health, and destabilizing the climate. We'll look at this and the way forward today on Earthfile. Do stay with us. Humanity produces over 430 million tons of plastic annually, two-thirds of which are short-lived products that soon become waste. While the social and economic costs of plastic pollution range between $300 to $600 billion per year. Producing plastics is immensely profitable as its exponential growth over time demonstrates and creates utility and social welfare in its many uses throughout the economy. However, UNEP says plastics is profitable primarily because the external costs it generates have been shifted to others and into the future. While the primary plastics sector of polymers and additives accounts for between $600 and $700 billion per year in revenues, it also inflicts a heavy burden on human health and environmental degradation, with the poorest in society facing the highest impact while contributing the least to plastic overconsumption and waste. UNEP concludes that while the estimates vary due to either the use of different underlying flows of plastic waste or the different methods and cost coefficients, the social and environmental costs associated with plastic pollution converge around the range of $300 and $600 billion per year. It is believed that as the data on ecological and health effects across the life cycle are further refined and validated, the accuracy of the estimates will increase.
It is a very grave issue that people only see one aspect of normally. They see the plastic waste and they see it as a waste problem, but it's very much more than that. Plastic, from the very beginning of its life, already hurts and harms people, and it's already threatening our environment from that very point where you're extracting fossil fuels. And speaking of fossil fuels, of course, there is that direct correlation between plastic pollution and the climate crisis, because 99% of our plastics come from fossil fuels, but it also means that the whole life cycle of plastic starts producing greenhouse gas emissions that continue to drive climate change.
Here in Nigeria, Taiwo Adewale has been in the waste management industry for 21 years, and today is one of the many local entrepreneurs helping to mop up plastic waste in Lagos, Nigeria's commercial capital. His organization, Waste Swap, is a community recycling center which operates an incentive and cash reward scheme by collecting recyclable waste materials from registered consumers and in turn rewards them based on the volumes which they can accumulate and use to redeem cash and numerous household items offered through the reward system.
As we all know, Lagos State generates about 14,000 tons of waste every day, and this waste we have about 3,000 which consists of plastic. And when we talk of plastic, it's not only plastic bottles. We look at styrofoam, we look at nylon and so on. So this prompt also come up with what we call the community recycling center, whereby we are bringing recycling closer to people, because a lot of people complain, oh, if I have to gather my plastic, do I have to go all the way to Loma office or where, which is far away. So what we did in partnership with Loma was, okay, register all the collectors, and presently in Lagos we have about 135 of us registered under Loma, and we have an association called Lagos Recycler Association, which happen to be an ESCO too. So by this particular facility, what we do is we try to encourage people within the community, bring your plastic to us and get cash in return. So it's incentive, it's an incentive-driven initiative, because People will tell you there's no law or anything making it mandatory for us to separate. So, but what you do is, okay, if you bring this item to us, you get cash in return. With this cash, they're able to pay for their children's school fees, they're able to buy their food stuff, they're able to even pay for health insurance for themselves. So this is serving part of the SDG goals.
Fawaz often used to get sent home from school because his mother, Fatima, had not paid his fees, until he enrolled in a different school offering a novel solution, waste for fees. The waste they are carrying is weighed at the school premises and its sales value added to Fawaz's account.
4.1 kg.
Whenever I bring it, they would write it down, and when it is enough, they would tell me my son's payment is complete. Sometimes, if he wants to buy sportswears, the school will tell me what I need to add to complete the required amount for it, and anything like books too.
In 2019, teachers at Fawaz's primary school in the tough and sprawling Lagos neighborhood of Ajegunle had sent him home countless times due to unpaid fees. One day, as he picked his way back home, a school owner approached him with a solution for his mother, Fatima Adeosun, to foot the bills. My Dreamstead School, where Fawaz is now enrolled, located in the sprawling, impoverished Ajegunle neighborhood, is one of 40 low-cost schools in Lagos that accepts recyclable waste as payment. Tuition fees at My Dreamstead is about 61,000 naira per year, and the school is expanding into a second apartment block to accommodate its 120 pupils. Only 7 children were enrolled when it opened in 2019. Isaac Success Omoyele is the school's proprietor. He also grew up in this neighborhood and was also chased out of school while growing up.
This solution is actually helping more kids to actually enroll into school. It is something laudable. So we have also experienced what's called tremendous growth. We're making use of just one particular apartment before, but we had to increase because more kids are actually coming, and it is part of our vision and our dream to actually see how every child will have access to quality education.
The school partners with African Cleanup Initiative, a local environmental organization that collects the bottles, cans, drink cartons and plastic containers brought into the schools by parents and sells them to recyclers. The proceeds of the sales pay for teacher salaries, children's uniforms, books and pens, among other expenses. The scheme aims to reduce the number of children out of school as well as the amount of rubbish on the streets of Lagos.
The number of out-of-school children within the communities that have worked have gradually reduced to a large extent. Secondly, the cleanliness of the environment where we work with has actually improved to a large extent because before, when you get to some of these communities that we work with, you just see the bottles everywhere, nobody cares about it. But since we started, they now see these PET bottles like an exchange for their child's school fees, so they don't throw it anyhow.
As Fatima heads home from her son's school, she squared bins on the streets for more recyclables. Providing for Fawaz, her youngest child, has been particularly difficult since she was forced to vacate the room she used as a salon in 2018. Today, she is happy her son does not need to leave school before the end of the school day again.
When I discovered that they could collect the plastics from me to keep my child in school, it made my burden lighter.
It is believed that with about 2.5 million tons of plastic waste annually, Nigeria ranks ninth globally among countries with the highest contributions to plastic pollution. Unfortunately, over 88% of the plastic waste generated in the country is not recycled. Although there are several recycling initiatives in Nigeria, only a small percentage of plastic waste is recycled. According to the National Bureau of Statistics, less than 10% of plastic waste generated in Nigeria is recycled, with the majority of the waste ending up in landfills or water bodies. This situation exacerbates the already critical waste management challenges, including flooding, soil degradation, and air pollution.
Presently in Nigeria, the total production of these plastic bottles is about 5 billion bottles every year, which is about 250,000 tons. every year. So you can imagine in the last 10 years what have accumulated in the environment. So and whenever the rainy season is here, you see everybody complain, oh, my drainage is blocked, or there's flooding. But what actually blocked these drainages are the plastics. So that's why we try as much as possible to sensitize people and make sure we give them incentive that, look, instead of allowing your plastic to go into the dogs, to go into your drainage or to get into your canal, bring them to us, you get cash in return. And that's why we try to do as much as possible to do door-to-door collection, to even make sure by the time the PSP come to your house, there's no single plastic in your dustbin. You must have separated them because you get incentive in return for it. So we are doing everything possible, but the key thing has to do with awareness and education, because that is why we see work on the road now. You see the plastic, and most people don't pay observation. If you look at majority of this plastic now, there's always a sign on it: keep the environment clean, recycle. But most people don't. People just buy, they drink, they don't even read what is on it. And so that's why the producer too has a lot of responsibility to do in time of awareness creation. The NGOs, the private sector, everybody, even the government, they have a lot to do in time of awareness creation. We have what we call the EPR, Extended Producer Responsibility, which made the producer to form an alliance called Food Beverage Recycling Alliance. So the big producer, they form an alliance already. They are trying to follow international standard that, look, in other countries, this is what we do. So that's why they formed this alliance, and they'll be doing everything possible to support some of us. They give us incentive. They even give us material to support what we are doing, because their own is just to produce while we do the collection. So, but there are laws there. Even at federal level, we have the federal government of plastic pollution. Then even at state level, we have the Lagos State Waste Plastic Policy. So there are policies in place already, but the key thing has to do with implementation and evaluation.
Which has always been our problem.
Exactly.
Do you think we can get this right?
Yeah, we get it right once we have the right people in position to make sure, yes, we put our foot down. Because what the government has been doing is carrot and stick, but the government has been giving carrot, but I think it's time to start using the stick. We have given them enough carrots.
Despite the challenges, plastic recycling presents a significant opportunity for Nigeria. The continent's recycling industry is valued at over $3 billion and has the potential to create jobs, promote sustainable development, and reduce plastic waste pollution. Nigeria can leverage its population size and abundance of plastic waste to establish a thriving recycling industry that can address the country's waste management challenges while creating employment opportunities and contributing to the economy.
With the issue of subsidy, I believe this is even an avenue for people to make money, because I give people an example. Whenever the PSP come to your house to pick your waste, you pay them. But this time around, if you're able to separate your waste, in fact, the PSP will come, you tell them, I don't have any waste. What I have are resources, material. Are you ready to buy? Are you ready to buy my plastic, buy my nylon, buy my carton? So in this case, people will make extra money, because these are waste you generate every day. You make extra income from it. And we're also looking at even incentive that, okay, instead of even giving cash, is it possible you get some bus passes, bring your plastic, get bus pass for your public transportation. So many innovation and incentive we are looking at to encourage people out there. And even some of these materials, especially the styrofoam, now there's an organization going out there to collect those takeaway packs, the styrofoam, convert them to chemical and sell them to any petrochemical industry that are ready to buy them. So you can even see locally we have raw materials for the local industry. We produce about 250,000 tons every year, and you can imagine that volume. And out of these 250,000 tons, total collection rate is very, very low. The collection rate as at now is around 30%, which means there is a gap of 70%. But with more awareness, with more sensitization, we should be able to close the gap. And luckily for us now, we have what we call a lot of off-takers. Because one thing is for you to collect, and another thing is for another company to pick up. But now, presently in Nigeria, we have about 6 or 7 off-takers that be collecting these. They convert them to produce new bottle, what they call bottle-to-bottle production. We have polyester fiber. And what do they do with this polyester fiber? They produce mattress, they produce pillow, they produce carpet. Even the Chinese now are producing women weave-on, synthetic weave-on from this. So these are raw materials for industry. Instead of extracting from the environment, we can just put this back to achieve what we call circularity. The challenges has to do with logistics. So that's why I told you we are trying to bring it closer to people. And luckily for Lagos State, they've even come up with an app that you don't even need to leave your house. Once you have your recyclable, pick up your Android phone, request on the app, and you come to pick. But this is just Lagos alone out of 36 states. So if other states can emulate what Lagos State is doing, it's go a long way, because most of this industry on monthly basis, they require not less than 500 tons. And the total collection we do is between 300 to 400. So there's still a wide gap. But once there's enough awareness and people find out there's an incentive attached, so that's why we try to give incentive. once they find out there's an incentive, it will be very, very hard. In fact, a time will come in Lagos or in Nigeria that once people see you drinking plastic water, they'll be hanging around you just for you to drop and quickly pick because they know there's an incentive attached to those plastics.
Nigeria is believed to have an opportunity to become a leading exporter of recycled plastics globally. According to the United Nations, Africa's demand for plastic materials is projected to increase by 67% by 2030, providing a significant market for recycled plastics. The United Nations Environment Programme says a systems change is needed to address the cause of plastic pollution. In its latest report, Turning Off the Tap, How the World Can End Plastic Pollution and Create a Circular Economy, it combines reducing the most problematic and unnecessary plastic uses with 3 market shifts: reuse, recycle, and reorientate and diversify, and actions to deal with the plastic pollution legacy. The report, released in May, just before the talks on how to reduce plastic pollution, with the hope of agreeing to a binding treaty that will be implemented before the end of 2024.
We gathered here in Paris because the linear plastic economy is gushing pollution galore, choking our ecosystems, warming the climate, damaging our health. And as ever with the triple planetary crisis, that crisis of climate change, the crisis of nature and biodiversity loss, and yes, the crisis of pollution and waste, people in the poorest nations and communities, they suffer the most. Current commitments will only reduce plastic pollution by 8% by 2040, so the tap is still wide open. And this agreement could be, must be, shall be the tool that the world uses to close that tap. Please bear in mind that only elimination, reduction, a full life cycle approach, transparency, and a just transition, only those can bring success. Because the truth is that we cannot recycle our way out of this mess. Recycling infrastructure is unable to... Thank you. Recycling infrastructure is unable to cope with today's volumes. To me, it is about redesign, 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 and then some redesign. And so first, redesign products to use less plastics or no plastic at all, particularly unnecessary and problematic plastic. Is there really a need for micro and nanoplastics in so many hygiene and beauty products? Must shampoos and soaps be liquefied and delivered in a plastic containers? Because essentially, we're just shipping water around the globe in these liquid products. Why not ship solids? Why not ship dry powder or compressed materials? And why not, when we then ship these, ship them in compostable or recycled materials or other organic options? Why can't we do that?
The third session of the Intergovernmental Negotiating Committee on Plastic Pollution, including in the marine environment, took place from the 13th to 19th November 2023 at the United Nations Environment Programme's headquarters in Nairobi, Kenya. In March 2022, at the resumed 5th session of the UN Environment Assembly, a historic resolution was adopted to develop an international legally binding instrument on plastic pollution, including in the marine environment. The resolution 5/14 requested the Executive Director of the United Nations Environment Programme to convene an intergovernmental negotiating committee, which is to be based on a comprehensive approach that addresses the full life cycle of plastic, including its production, design, and disposal. The Intergovernmental Negotiating Committee began its work during the second half of 2022 with the ambition to complete the negotiations by the end of 2024. The first session of the INC, known as the INC1, took place in Uruguay from the 28th November to 2nd of December 2022, followed by a second session, INC2, in Paris from the 29th of May to 2nd of June 2023. The third session, INC3, was held from 13th to 19th of November 2023 at the UNEP headquarters in Nairobi, Kenya. During the first round of talks in 2022, countries set an ambitious deadline of having a legally binding treaty agreed within a year. Dozens of countries listed public health as one of the priority concerns in limiting plastics production and waste during the second round that ended on the 2nd of June 2023. Some environmental groups criticized the report for focusing on waste management, which they saw as a concession to the global plastics and petrochemicals industry.
There are studies showing that there's microplastics in our air, in our water, and in our bodies as well. And that's just one facet of the problem. If you go into the communities where plastic production happens, they're already suffering from very serious health risks and health conditions because of emissions, of contamination from these plastic production facilities.
The UNEP report also identified 13,000 chemicals associated with plastic production, more than 3,000 of which were considered hazardous.
Under Agenda Item 6, the committee has before it document.
But after a rocky start to a week of negotiations, around 180 countries agreed to develop a first draft by November. Though the first half of the 5-day negotiations was spent arguing over procedural issues, delegations split into two groups to discuss the range of control measures that can be taken to stop plastic pollution, as well as whether countries should develop national plans or set global targets to tackle the problem.
As we roll out this redesign,
The start of negotiations were bogged down by more than 2 days of discussions focused on the rules of procedure for the talks. Saudi Arabia, Russia, China and others objected to the idea that decisions on the treaty could be adopted by a majority vote rather than a consensus, which gives one or a few countries the ability to block adoption. Some that have formed a high-ambition coalition comprising Norway, Rwanda, New Zealand, the European Union and others have called for a top-down approach where global targets are set to reduce virgin plastic production and eliminate fossil fuel subsidies, among other measures.
The EU and its member states are fully committed and determined to this process, and we look forward to constructively engage with all parties to move our process forward. Time is short. We need to be bold and innovative and act without delay. We must work together in a cooperative and constructive spirit to end plastic pollution.
However, with the hangover of delays from INC2 and stalling tactics from a handful of low-ambition countries, INC3 negotiations closed with no agreement to develop a first draft, only an updated or revised version of the zero draft with all options captured within, and no agreement to undertake formal intersessional work. This leaves negotiators with a lot of work at INC4 coming up in April 2024, both agreeing on the first draft and progressing negotiations toward the final text, which member states committed to sign by the end of this year.
A critical step in the negotiation to make sure that that zero draft, which came into this meeting, and in our view, as is often the time, it tends to be an underwhelming document, needed to be filled out with a broader range of views from governments. That we now have in the document a wide range of views that will carry forward into INC4, and at INC4 that's where we expect governments to start to narrow down and identify areas of consensus that will eventually go into the agreement.
During negotiations, as is the case with many international instruments, financing was also a strong topic of contention. Many governments, particularly from the Global South, emphasized the need for financing and robust equity measures to ensure effective global implementation. Private finance was not a major part of formal discussion, but was highlighted by some negotiators as an important source of capital to fund treaty aims. Financial institutions from around the world have expressed their concern around the plastic pollution crisis and their willingness to support efforts to tackle it by redirecting funds. Before INCS 3, 49 financial institutions with over $3.5 trillion in assets under management signed an open letter to government calling for mandatory corporate disclosure within the treaty in order to provide the data they urgently need to facilitate these shifts in financial flows. At present, significant data gaps exist across the plastics industry, which hamstring investors' efforts to identify pollution mitigating activities while also hindering effective evidence-based policy making and decision making by the private sector. Harmonized and comparable plastic-related corporate data obtained through disclosure has been said to be crucial to unlocking the trillions in private capital required to help solve financing issues, and will remain in sharp focus among negotiators and private sector actors in the coming meetings. The United Nations Environment Programme suggests ways to deal with the remaining plastic policy legacy and recommends that a global fiscal framework could be part of international policies to enable recycled materials to compete on a level playing field with virgin materials, create an economy of scale for solutions, and establish monitoring systems as well as financing mechanisms. And with that, we end today's show. Thank you for watching. Our inbox, earthfile@channelcv.com, is always available for your comments and your questions. From me, Ayola Kasim, and the crew here in Lagos, it's bye for now.